At Lively Paradox, we sometimes share absurd statements that, when investigated, actually prove to be true. Today, I'm going to talk about the 4 things that tend to illustrate what happens in our lives when obstacles get in the way. My name's Nicole Price, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here. And I honestly don't intend to tell you anything you don't already know. It's just my hope that at the end of this session, you'll think about what you know very, very differently. In today's environment, many people are talking about accountability. One of my favorites is the author Shawn Achor, who wrote the book Before Happiness. And Shawn Achor is the one who tells you that the more personal accountability that you have in your own life, the happier you will be. However, when you ask a group of individuals to define the word accountability, many things always come to the top, and responsibility is one, ownership is another, who's going to be in trouble when things go wrong. And across our national landscape right now, especially in media, when we cite the word accountability, many times we are talking about failures, missteps, when things just didn't go as planned. But in 1967, a man named Martin Seligman introduced us to this concept of learned helplessness, or a victim mentality that is the opposite of personal accountability. And there's a story that I think helps to illustrate the point. If you put fleas in a glass, they all will jump out. That's what fleas do. They jump, and they jump really high. But if you put fleas in a glass and you put a lid on that glass, the fleas will jump up and hit their bodies against the lid until the most natural thing in the world happens. They start to realize it hurts. There's an obstacle there, and they'll start jumping just below the lid. Once you have 100% compliance and all of those fleas are jumping just below the lid, you can take the lid off. And once you take the lid off, the fleas will just still jump to the same level. None of those fleas will jump out of the glass. And the question I have for you is, do the fleas have the ability to jump out of the glass? Can they still jump out? You see, fleas only have about a 2-day lifespan. And so they haven't, in this short amount of time, lost their ability to jump. They just imagine that there's still a barrier there because they tried really hard in the past to get out. They bumped their bodies. It was painful. And so now they believe that there's an obstacle there that doesn't exist. The most amazing thing about fleas, though, is that even the offspring of the fleas who have been exposed to the lid will never jump out of the glass. Now, why is that significant? I believe it is because of these particular 4 things that I want you to remember. Number 1, we are all here on this planet for a very unique reason. Fleas are here to jump. And every single one of you has a unique purpose. When I think about what Albert Einstein has said in the past, he was quoted to say, everybody is a genius, not somebody. Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. What is your unique reason? What is your purpose? It is likely that your purpose is so easy for you that you don't even consider it as something that is the thing that you should do in life. There's a woman I used to work with. Her name is Mary Shannon, and Mary is incredibly good at understanding what minority-owned businesses need to do and women-owned businesses need to do in order to obtain the special classification that gets them additional government contracts and potentially new business. She looks at the paperwork and it's just so obvious to her. It's the thing that people call her about always. And Mary asks this question regularly. I don't get it. Why don't people just fill out the paperwork? Why don't they just do it? And when Mary and I talk, I tell her frequently, Mary, that's your thing to do. That's your unique space in the world. And right now she's kind of buried inside of a company doing some work that she might be passionate about, but I'm not sure that it's her purpose. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people out there who need that unique skill set. And Mary, she's here to do that. It's so clear because people come to her for it. What's your passion? Like, what's that thing that you would do anyway? And when I think about Mary, if I were to call her and ask her to help me in this space, she would do it. And she would do it for no fee, and she would do it anyway. When I think about what I do for a living, it doesn't matter when I was working as a chemical engineer, when I was inside of a plant, when I was in a wastewater treatment lab. The thing that I did regularly was coach and develop people. Sometimes I did it on the weekends. Sometimes I did it on the holidays. Sometimes I did it in the middle of the summer. I was going to do it anyway. What is that thing that you just love to do, that you just have a fire in your belly about? And then finally, what about prowess? What's your skill? What are you skilled at? Your skill might come easily, or it might be something that you have to work at. Some of us, because we have purpose and because we have passion, won't always put in the 10,000 hours worth of work in order to be great at something. And that's especially true if we happen to be moderately good. It is very hard to do what Jim Collins calls make the leap from good to great. It's not impossible, but it is challenging because we're not maybe used to working at it in this particular area. And so think about these three things when you think about your unique purpose and reason for being on the planet. Number 2, every once in a while, people will place lids or obstacles in our way. Rise up. Now, Seligman wrote another piece in about 1990. At this time, I was in high school, talking about this notion of reverse optimism. And it's about thinking positively no matter what. And there's some criticism of that work, particularly because if you have learned optimism, you might not reach out for help, or you might not realize how bad things are, and so therefore might not seek the help that you need. But here's what I will tell you. To recognize that there are lids, that there are systemic things that might be keeping you from living to the fullest potential of your purpose, to recognize it is really good. To deny that it exists will be bad for you. Here's what my question though. Imagine that there are lids. You're right that they're there. So now what? Byron Katie, she lives in California, and she has an organization called The Work. And if you haven't been exposed, check out thework.com when you get a chance. And she says that denying reality is the cause of our suffering and pain. And the Buddhists have been saying this for years. Here's what I'm saying. Acknowledge what is true. And then I want you to work within the realm of your influence to actually do something about it. Watching videos and talking and pontificating about things is not going to change one thing. Write down the key things that you can do, what's in your circle of influence, and then go do those things. See, when a flea is in a glass and there's a lid on there on that glass, there will be the exceptional flea who can like jump up, crawl under the underside of the lid and wiggle its way out. Those people exist. Those types of people exist. But for the rest of us, during the lid experiences, we have to hone our skills. We have to keep jumping. Don't just lie on the bottom of the glass. Jump, jump, jump. Because once that lid is removed, you have to be ready when the opportunity presents itself to live fully into your purpose and jump out of the glass. So yes, you are 100% right that obstacles do exist at times. And given that those obstacles are there, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? It was one of the most critical questions that's been asked of me in my leadership journey by a woman named Amy Windmiller Wood. And Amy caused me to think about the difference between being 100% right and assessing a situation versus being effective and actually doing something. Are you measuring the temperature in the room, or are you changing the temperature in the room? And only you can answer that question. Now, third, we all have power in some way, in some aspect of our lives. We have power, privilege, and influence. And when we have power, when we have privilege, when we have influence, we have to do what we can to make sure that there are no lids. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And so I want you to think about the areas in your life where you might be powerful, where you might be privileged. Are you an adult? How do you treat children? Are you wealthy? How do you treat the poor? Are you thin? How do you treat people who are heavy? Are you straight? How do you treat the LGBTQ community? When you have power, how do you act? Because figuring out your character is not, it's not very important to me when you are not in a power position. But when you have power, how do you act in those situations? When you have the ability to remove lids, how do you act? Because what we tend to do is look at everyone else who puts the lid on and say they need to remove lids. But I'm telling you, we have the ability for where we can be more just in our actions to help people, and we need to start today. Be certain that the lid is off. Where you can, you help to remove lids. As we look outward and point our fingers and blame others, and they might be wrong, and I will ask the same question. You might be right about their wrongness, but how effective are you? If we start chipping away at these issues, one little brick at a time, that's how the Berlin Wall came tumbling down. When you look at the issues holistically and over the long term, sometimes the obstacles are just too big to even manage. When I think about my health issues with being pre-diabetic, if I think that I have to completely change my diet across the board and exercise like an Olympic athlete, I will not reach my goal. But if I think every single meal I have a choice in the matter, just the entrance of the idea that I have choice has helped me to impact that number in positive ways. I'm still working on it, which is why I bring it up, because I am here in complete non-judgment, letting you know that sometimes even I have lids, and I recognize that it's troublesome when you have them. However, what is the best way to try to encourage yourself? Encourage others. So where you can remove lids, do so. Then fourth and finally, former obstacles don't always present challenges today. We are struggling with persistent issues because of our beliefs. Assume the lid is gone. Assume there are no limits. I like to ask people in my coaching sessions, what if you had magic fairy dust and anything was possible? What would you do? Because what I have learned is that it's not an ability issue. It's a self-assuredness issue. We have lost confidence in our ability to jump. When you think about fleas, the fleas that don't jump when the lid is gone, it has nothing anymore to do with the lid. It has everything in those moments to do with what the flea believes to be true. Now, am I saying that the flea didn't face obstacles in the past? Absolutely, the flea did. But does the flea have obstacles right now? And the answer is no. And I just challenge you that in the areas of your life where you're not meeting the goals that you have, just start where you are. Arthur Ashe, the amazing United States tennis player who died earlier than we would have hoped, said these words: start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. If this has been good content for you, follow us on social media at Lively Paradox on Instagram and Facebook, and on Twitter it is I am Nicole Price. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to shoot me an email, nicole@livelyparadox.com.